All stories are born of the land, for it is the land that remembers, it is the land that holds truth, and it is the land that teaches us if we are willing to listen. And in the place called Israel, land and time are braided together like strands of hair in ceremony, inseparable, unbroken, and heavy with meaning that reaches far beyond what the eyes can see. This is no ordinary stretch of soil or stone, though it may appear as such to one unfamiliar with the ways of sacred geography. It is a narrow line on a map, perhaps easy to overlook by those who only measure land by its size. But in its breadth, this land holds the weight of thousands of years of prayer, of struggle, of longing, and of return. It is a land that carries the footsteps of prophets, the songs of shepherds, the cries of exiles, and the whispered hopes of every soul that has knelt upon its ground and called it holy. And so we begin, as all journeys must, by listening to the land and to those who have walked before us. We begin not simply to see what has come and gone, but to bear witness to what still rises, what still grows, and what still speaks in the voice of stone and spirit. The city that stands before us now did not rise from myth, but from a vision shared beneath the open sky. Tel Aviv, whose name means Hill of Spring, is a place where an idea became a city, where sand became sanctuary, and where the future was imagined by those who had wandered far from their homeland, yet still held its dream like a fire unextinguished. In the year 1909, a gathering of Jewish families stood on this coast, their hands full of seashells and their hearts full of purpose. And with those small tokens of the sea, they marked the ground for homes not yet built, not merely with hope, but with sacred intention. And what they imagined that day has now become a city unlike any other, a place where the pulse of innovation beats in rhythm with the Mediterranean wind, where modern towers rise like waves caught in glass, and where the spirit of rebirth walks boldly in the sunlight. But beneath the shimmering skyline and the rush of progress, there is a deeper story, for Tel Aviv carries not only ambition, but memory. A people scattered for centuries have gathered here once more, their voices filling cafes, their songs echoing in galleries, their lives woven together in the same soil that once bore the footprints of those long past. It is not merely a modern city, it is a living one, full of laughter, invention, and the sacred rhythm of resilience. There is movement in this city, not only of people, but of spirit. From the runners at dawn along the sea's edge to the sellers of spices beneath the dusk, to the old station where trains no longer run, but light still flows like a river of joy. And within its heart lies the White City, where over 4,000 buildings stand as monuments not just to design, but to survival. Homes built in the Bauhaus style by those who fled the fires of Europe, yet brought with them their craft, their courage, and their quiet determination to begin again. And yet, to truly feel the roots of this place, one must follow the shoreline, not toward the future, but toward the ancient beginning. There, where the sea still speaks in the language of waves, is Jaffa, a place older than stories, whose stones hold more than just age, but the presence of legend and truth intertwined. It is said that Noah's sons once stood here, that Jonah sailed from this very harbor only to meet the belly of the great fish, and that Solomon's mighty cedars arrived through this port, destined for the Temple of Jerusalem. Jaffa has known every kind of ruler, pharaohs and prophets, crusaders and conquerors, and yet it has never forgotten how to stand. Its alleyways bend and twist like old rivers, lined with the scent of orange trees and the songs of many tongues, Arabic, Hebrew, Armenian, all circling in the salty air like birds returning to nest. If you look with soft eyes, you will see the layers. A Byzantine church beside an Ottoman doorway, Roman stone beneath a modern studio, ancient faith resting beside new hands shaping clay. This port still welcomes ships, but more than goods, they now carry stories, songs, and the weight of coexistence. For here, artists and fishermen, Muslims and Jews, share a shoreline that has watched the sun rise and set for more than 4,000 years. From the high places of Jaffa, one can see Tel Aviv glittering in the distance like a promise. And in that view, past and future do not struggle. They speak. But sometimes, when one has walked in cities and listened to the murmur of stone, another voice calls, one softer, one older still, from the hills, from the wilderness, from the water. Northward we travel, where the mountain meets the sky and the earth leans gently toward the sea. And there we come to Haifa, a city that does not shout for your attention, but welcomes it with grace. It is carved into the side of Mount Carmel, a mountain whose name has been spoken in prayer for centuries, and upon which a garden now climbs like a hymn given form. At the heart of this city is the Baha'i Garden, 19 terraces rising like a great stairway toward the sky, not in dominance, but in offering. These gardens are shaped by silence and symmetry, by devotion and stillness, and they embody a faith whose root is unity, of people, of prophets, of nations, of all that breathes under the same sun. Here, belief becomes visible. Every path, every flower, every drop of water reflects the peace that so many have sought and so few have found. And even if only for a moment, in this sacred design, it feels near. Haifa itself is like the garden, layered, diverse, alive. Jews, Christians, Muslims, Druze, and Baha'i live here not in tension, but in a kind of woven community, like different feathers in the same sacred bundle. The port opens to the world, the laboratories reach toward the future, but the mountain still holds its place, the place where the prophet Elijah once called down fire, and where generations since have looked out across the sea and wondered. We turn inland now to the gentle hills of Galilee land that hums with quiet power. And in these hills lies a town whose name carries more than geography. Nazareth. Spoken softly in homes and sanctuaries across the earth, Nazareth is not known for its size, but for the story it cradles. In a house carved into rock, it is said an angel visited a young woman named Mary, and in that visit, heaven and earth touched for a moment. The boy who would be called teacher, prophet, redeemer, was raised here in the shade of olive trees and in the song of birds over stone. Today, over that sacred cave rises the Basilica of the Annunciation, a place built not once, but again and again. Byzantine, Crusader, and now modern, each era leaving a layer of reverence. The stones are not just built upon each other, they listen to one another. Inside, mosaics gifted from every corner of the world surround pilgrims who come not as tourists, but as seekers. They kneel, they weep, they sing, drawn by the moment when the divine first stirred in a woman's womb and time stood still. Outside, Nazareth moves with life. The market rings with spice and song. And though cars pass and children play, there remains a hush, deep and old. This is not a museum. It is a city in motion, where faith is not kept behind glass, but walks the streets with sandals on. And just beyond, where the land curves and the sky widens, there is water again. Not sea, but lake. The Sea of Galilee. Its surface glows at dawn, and its stillness holds the memory of miracles. It was here that Jesus walked across water, where fishermen laid down their nets to follow, where a sermon fed multitudes. And even now, to float upon these waters is to feel the breath of something eternal passing over your skin. The town of Tiberias rests upon this lake, a place touched by emperors and scholars, warriors and wanderers. It has known many names, many tongues, but always the same sky. It is one of the holy cities of Judaism, a place where ancient books were written, where sages found rest. Beneath its soil, hot springs rise, and long ago, people came to be healed. And even now they come. Churches, mosques, and synagogues watch over this water together, their stones sharing the same horizon. It is one of the rare places on earth where so many sacred stories breathe the same air. yet Israel is not only story, it is stone and salt, uplift and erosion. It is miracle, yes, but also wonder. And now we descend, far below where rivers run, to a place that is lower than all others on the surface of the earth. The Dead Sea. This is a land of inversion, where the air thickens, and the water holds you like a parent refusing to let go. No fish swim here, no reeds bend, and yet it is not lifeless. The salt has sculpted its own cathedral, bright, strange, quiet. Here King David once wandered, Herod once built above, Cleopatra once bathed, and now so do we. The water, 10 times as salty as the ocean, pushes your body to float, as though the land itself is lifting you toward the sky. You look up, and for a moment you are between worlds, between weight and weightlessness. But this sacred place is shrinking. Its shoreline recedes. The ground opens into sinkholes. The signs are not metaphor. They are real. What vanishes here is not only water, it is story. It is time. It is a living part of the earth's memory, slipping away. And yet, above the retreating waters, another place holds firm. Masada, stone rising into sky. But that story, like all great stories, must be told in its own breath. We will walk there next. There is a place where stone meets sky in silence, where winds speak not as enemies, but as elders. Where the spirit of defiance still echoes through each grain of dust and every carving on the cliffside. This place is Masada, High upon this plateau, the earth rises as though in prayer, a mountain not born of conquest, but of resistance, of final stands and final breaths taken in dignity. King Herod, long before the time of Rome's decline, built here his fortress among the stars, a palace with flowing water and columns that danced with the desert light. Yet this place, like all sacred sites, found its true meaning not in luxury, but in loss. When the Roman army came like a tide, the final defenders of a once scattered people climbed here, bringing with them not wealth, but hope. Hope that they might outlast oppression, hope that they might breathe freely if only for a little while longer. And when the moment came when resistance could no longer hold, they chose not to kneel, but to return their spirits to the great mystery with their heads lifted. The wind still moves here with purpose, sweeping through the ruins, carrying with it the memory of those final songs sung around fires before the silence came. And when you stand upon that sacred ground, with the world falling away on every side and the sun pouring gold over stone, you do not just see Masada, you feel it, you inherit it. And from this height we descend once more into the valleys of birth and breath. Southward we move, toward a city carved into the hearts of millions, a name spoken in hymns and whispered in lullabies, Bethlehem. Here, in a quiet cave beneath the surface of the modern world, the story of Jesus begins. Not in splendor, not in power, but in a manger, among animals, under stars. Born not to rule with iron, but to teach with light. The Church of the Nativity rises above this place now, its stones heavy with time, with reverence, with footsteps worn smooth by centuries of belief. From here we travel to the center, not only of this land, but of three faiths whose roots dig deep into the same earth. Jerusalem. There is no way to approach this city without feeling its weight. Its name is whispered in synagogues, sung in mosques, painted into stained glass. It has been claimed, conquered, burned, rebuilt, and prayed over for thousands of years. And still it stands. Jerusalem is not one city, but many, layered atop one another like rings in a tree. You walk on Roman roads beneath Crusader arches, past Jewish homes, beside Christian shrines, beside Muslim minarets, and all of them, all at once, are real, alive, and holy. At the heart of the Jewish story lies the Western Wall. Each stone pressed with hands, with tears, with notes written by those who carry questions too deep to speak aloud. Above it, the dome of the rock rises in golden silence. The place where Mohammed, peace be upon him, is believed to have ascended to the heavens, carried by divine grace. Just beyond, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre stands, its walls heavy with incense and generations of prayer, built upon the place where Jesus was laid to rest and rose again. These are not museums. These are sacred fires still burning. And as you walk the narrow corridors of the old city, where spice and song and sorrow mix in the air, you begin to understand what sacred truly means, not distant, but immediate. Not perfect, but pulsing, not easy, but necessary. In Jerusalem, every step is a question, every breath a possibility, every prayer a plea. So we leave its gates, not to escape it, but to carry what it teaches into the open places where the desert waits. The Negev. To some, this is emptiness. To those who know how to listen, it is a teacher. The desert holds silence not as absence, but as wisdom. Here, in the great dry belly of the land, the earth stretches in quietude. No high towers, no noise of cities. Only the wind and the animals that move in shadows, and the ancient paths of Bedouin tribes whose knowledge is written in stars and sand. The Negev covers more than half the land of Israel, and yet few walk it. Those who do learn to see life in unlikely places, an ibex perched on the edge of a cliff, a flower blooming from stone, a child running beside a camel. And now, beneath this sun, the people have begun to work with the land, not against it. They coax crops from sand, pull water from dry air, and let the desert become a partner in survival, not a foe. There is wisdom here, the same wisdom known to our own people long before fences divided land. That the earth is not something to be conquered, but to be walked with. And when the desert finally releases its hold, when the wind begins to smell of salt again, the land offers one last treasure. Eilat. The waters here are a different kind of holy, not of scriptures, but of coral and color. The Red Sea shimmers, not with myth, but with life. Below its surface move creatures whose shapes defy words, whose colors seem painted by dreams. Turtles glide like ancient spirits, and tiny fish shimmer like morning dew. This coral reef, one of the northernmost in the world, is fragile, threatened by warming waters, careless hands, and the turning of the earth, but still it pulses, still it gives. And here, on this final shore, three nations touch, Egypt, Jordan, Israel. Children from each play in the same waves, unaware of borders, aware only of the sun on their backs and the water holding them up. It is in places like this that the land remembers our unity, even when we forget. All through this land, the stories have whispered to us, not as echoes from a forgotten past, but as living truths still unfolding, still breathing, still becoming. And what we have found in Israel is not a relic preserved in glass, nor a place suspended in time, but a land that speaks in many tongues from many mouths with many hearts, and every voice, in its own way, says, "I am sacred." We have stood where kings once ruled, where prophets once wandered, where the cries of war and the songs of peace have rung out over the same hills under the same stars. We have seen deserts that bloom after long silence, and cities that rise not only from stone but from vision, carried across generations like embers in a bundle of sage, kept alive against all odds. We have witnessed a people returning to a home they carried inside them for centuries. And we have seen that this land does not belong to one alone. It belongs to all who come with reverence, all who remember that the ground itself is older than flags and wiser than politics. We have tasted the salt of the Dead Sea and felt its heavy stillness wrap around us like a shawl. We have stood in the winds of Masada and heard in their cry the will of a people who chose dignity even in death. We have walked the lanes of Nazareth, breathed the prayers of Bethlehem, wept in Jerusalem, and smiled in the gardens of Haifa. We have floated in waters that remember miracles, and we have placed our feet in the soil where olive trees still bear fruit after 1,000 years. And in all of this, we have come to understand the wonder of Israel is not only in its history or its holiness or its hardship, but in its endurance. Its ability to hold many truths at once, to carry many wounds and still offer healing, to sing many songs and still remain one land. As native people, we too know what it means to live in a land that speaks in layers. We too know the pain of loss, of separation from sacred ground. We too know the deep and quiet joy of return, not always to a physical place, but to the understanding that place and spirit are never truly apart. What Israel shows us, if we are listening, is that to belong to a land is not simply to live upon it, but to care for it, to pray with it, to protect its stories even when they are painful, even when they are complicated, even when they are shared. The wind here still remembers the footsteps of those who came first. The hills still carry the shape of ancient roads. The sea still listens, and the stones still speak, if you lean down close enough, with your hand upon the earth and your heart open. And so, we return now, not in body, but in knowing. What we carry from this place is more than knowledge. It is more than image or memory. It is a way of seeing, a reminder that every land is holy when it is held with care, that every people carries a sacred story, and that we are all, in the end, made of the same breath, the same clay, the same longing to connect what is seen with what is sacred. We are not visitors here. We are witnesses. And if we walk gently and speak truthfully, and remember what the land has shown us, then the wonder of Israel will not end here. It will live within us. Because the land is not finished. The story is not done. The journey continues, and it always begins with the land. So if this journey spoke to you, if the timeless hills, the sacred silence, and the layered stories of Israel stirred something within, let that feeling take root. Like and subscribe not for the numbers, but so we can keep exploring this land together. There's more to reveal, more echoes to follow, and more wonder waiting just past the horizon.